Hello ladies and gents, and welcome to another video guide. Due to common request, and frankly because of utter necessity, I thought I'd put out one regarding the strategies in generating AoE threat as a bear tank at level 85. When patch 4.0 came out, and swipe was changed to a 6-second cooldown, everyone was struggling to keep up with threat of their group, and as a result, Feral Druids began roaring at Blizzard's development team. Those changes were made to support the addition of our new level 81 ability, Thrash, as well as usher in the vengeance mechanics, which are greatly amplified with the current level of stamina on our gear. Although the class is working as intended now, and you have all the tools necessary to succeed in AoE tanking, these changes are still rather significant, which can lead to some confusion on how to do this properly. So let's break it down and take a moment to examine the abilities we'll be using in these situations. First, we begin by using a glyph that modifies our primary source of threat as a feral tank, that is, Maul. Before, this glyph, it used to be a standard cleave attack that caused the same amount of damage to both targets, but it has been changed to reduce the damage to a secondary target by 50%. That sounds like a nerf, but the change was made because of the obscene numbers we're seeing when the full potential of vengeance is factored in. The amount of damage bears cause to 2 target mobs would be far higher than any tank should ever be capable of dealing as it was before patch 4.0. Regardless, this is going to generate a ton of threat to any 2 targets you are tanking. Swipe. Swipe deals a lot of AoE damage and a lot of threat, but you can only use it every 6 seconds, so you need to really time when you use this ability. Don't use it when you'll only hit 3 out of 5 targets in a target radius. Wait until all 5 of those enemies are in range to yield the full benefit of the attack. Hitting those extra 2 targets will pull you more rage, keep things more organized, and ultimately allow you to keep control of the situation. Thrash. This ability's mechanics work identical to Swipe's in regards to its target radius and cooldown, but the type of damage it deals is very different. It causes probably about 40% of the damage Swipe deals instantly, but it also applies a 6-second bleed, which is substantial. Overall, it deals more threat than Swipe, but it costs 10 more rage. That isn't what's really important though. It applies a bleed, which means that every target affected by Thrash is going to be subject to the Rend and Tear bonus, which allows you to deal 20% more damage with Maul against all those foes. This makes Thrash very complementary to the glyph of Maul, allowing you to really acquire that aggro through your most powerful attack. Demoralizing Roar. You wouldn't believe how many people overlook this ability. It causes a lot of threat to all nearby enemies, and costs very little rage. It has no cooldown, meaning you can spam this one while you're moving around. You mostly want to do this when you're getting in position to swipe. It also means you take significantly less damage, so you can be around to deal the threat later. Berserk. This is your strongest ability. For lack of a better term, it's ridiculous. Your Mangle has no cooldown and hits 3 targets for 15 seconds, which can be glyphed to add another 5 seconds to that. So for 20 seconds, you can deal a shocking amount of damage to 3 enemies of your choosing. If anyone can out-threat you after this ability, they deserve a medal, because you should be out DPSing pretty much everyone in a dungeon while you use this. Observe this footage while I demonstrate proper AoE tanking in bear form. I'm timing the use of my swipes and thrashes so that they complement one another very well. They're both on a separate 6-second cooldown, so if I do it right, I can use one every 3 seconds, while still having the bleed ticks from Thrash dealing damage in between. I never face my back to the enemy, so that I can dodge every chance I get, which generates more rage and allows me to take a lot less damage. I'm dealing a lot of threat with Swipe and Thrash, but that isn't enough. Note that I'm using Maul on every cooldown, but more importantly, I'm tabbing and selecting a new target roughly each time I do so. This means Most of the time, I'm hitting 2 new targets with Maul every time I switch targets. While they're under the bleed from Thrash, they take 20% more damage from my Maul. I also mangle whenever I get a spare second and have enough rage. It helps to deal single target threat, as well as amplify the damage they take from the Thrash bleed. The important thing to remember is to be constantly switching targets. Even I don't do it enough, but it is the key to success in all AoE tanking. By default, your tab key will automatically switch to the nearest enemy, so using it will help to relieve stress from micromanaging too much. These moments can be a bit overwhelming to some who may not be very experienced with tanking, but remember to keep your cool. Just relax and focus on what you're doing. Of course, you want to be concerned about people pulling aggro, but you'll find if you stick to your strategy, this will happen much less until the few times it does happen, you'll be so well informed of the situation that you'll know exactly what happened and how to fix it. Now let's recap a little bit and go over some important tips to make sure that all this works the way it's supposed to. For starters, it really helps your rage generation and your threat to be hit capped. Do your best to make sure this happens by gemming and reforging if you have to. Expertise works in a similar regard, however the cap is very difficult to reach, meaning if you went out of your way to attain it, you'd likely be sacrificing too many other stats. But collect a lot of it, it's going to help you out a ton. Remember to not be too hasty when using your abilities. Like I said earlier, use your AoE attacks when they will yield the greatest benefit. Hit all 5 of those targets rather than just 3 by jumping the gun. Using Demoralizing Roar as a filler in the meantime will help to ensure your healer never pulls aggro during those first moments of a pull. Concentrate, but don't stress out. Focus more on the entirety of the scenario as opposed to tanking one foe at a time. Tanking is just as much observing your allies as your enemies. Note what your DPS players are doing so you can react to their actions accordingly. Ideally, they would be reacting to your actions, but you know how they are. It's best to just avoid confrontation by preventing a problem from happening, than otherwise allowing it to happen so you have to fix it later. Your job is to protect the group, not be the boss. Their role is just as important as yours. Use tab, or just remember to switch targets very frequently. This is the source of most people's tanking problems. Tabbing effectively will solve more problems than any amount of gear will. If the game were as easy as pressing 2 buttons, it wouldn't be fun. You have to try harder than just laying down and concentrate and yelling at your DPS that pull aggro. Put in the effort to apply sufficient threat to each individual unit. You'll find that by doing so, you are consequently AoE tanking without even realizing it. This, my friends, has been another video guide brought to you by Hangist and the Radiant Brigade. Remember to send me your feedback and suggestions so that I know how to better improve my videos. Also, don't forget to stop by the website for more stuff like this, as well as some written guides for those that learn better that way. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for more videos to come.